Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good Tvach, Shavua Tov. We are learning Mishnah Sukkah, Perek Gimel, Chapter 3. And we're going to do today Mishnah Beis and Gimel, Mishnah 2 and 3. Hadas Hagazel V'Hayavesh. Now we spoke about the Lulav. Now we're talking about the Hadas, which he translated as the myrtle. So the Hadas Hagazel V'Hayavesh Pasol. If you steal the Hadas, you can't use it for your Lulav and Esrig. You can't use it for your Dal and Minim. As we said before, either it has to be yours, or it's going to be, even if it would become yours, it's going to be a problem of mitzvah ba'avera, a mitzvah that comes about through a sin. Or if it's yavesh, if it's dried out, then it's fossil, then it's invalid. Similarly, as we said before. Shalashera, v'shlar. This is adas of an ashera. It was worshipped as an idol. That's what ashera means a tree that's worshipped as an idol. In this case, you worshipped the hadas bush, the nidachas, or it's part of an ir nidachas, part of a city that the majority of its inhabitants have turned to idol worship, where the halacha is that city has to be destroyed and all its properties burnt. And all that in that kind of situation, we consider the hadas as if it already was burnt, and it doesn't have any more the minimum size of 3 tfachim or 3 handbreadths that a hadas has to be. Next, niktam roishay, if its top was clipped off. The top here means the top of the stem, not the top leaves so much as the top of the stem. Nifritzu olav, or the majority of its leaves were torn off, meaning they came off. This means there were more berries than leaves. A hadas, if you leave it connected to the ground long enough, it's going to produce, berries are going to grow on it. So the Mishnah says that, so first the Mishnah said if the majority of its leaves were torn off or fell off, it's not going to be kosher anymore. Or if, let's say, even if all the leaves are there, but you have more berries than leaves, it's invalid. Now, the Bartanura tells us that the problem here when there's more berries than leaves is only when the berries are either black or red. But if the berries are green, then it's not a problem, because the beauty of the hadas is its green color. That's its natural color. You want it all to be green to be beautiful, or at least the majority of it to be green. So, but once you have the majority of it not being green, that takes away from the beauty of the hadas. So therefore we say, if you have more of the berries, again, of the colored berries, if they're green, it doesn't make a difference, because then it all blends into the natural color. But if it's of other colors, it's black or it's red, and there's more of them than the leaves, then we're going to say the halacha is that it is pasul. However, the Mishnah then says, "V'mi'atan kasher," but let's say you pick some of them off, and you decrease the number of berries. So now you go ahead and you have more leaves and berries. Kosher, you fixed it. It's good. You don't have more berries. You don't have the majority of berries anymore. You're good to go. But you cannot pick them off on yontif. Meaning, even though the hadas is already disconnected from the ground, you cannot take off those berries on yontif, and that is because since the presence of the berries disqualifies the hadas, when it removes them is in effect repairing it. And because of that, because it's like fixing something, therefore it is midrabanan forbidden to do on yontif. Okay, that's Mishnah Beis. Mishnah Gimel is going to start off very similar to Mishnah Beis. Now we're talking about the arava. Now we're talking about the arava, or the arava is called the willow, right? So arava gazula vivesha, a stolen arava or a dry one, pasul, invalid. Okay, shalashera v'shalani dachas, if it's from an ashera tree or from a city that has to be destroyed, psula, it's going to be invalid, as we said before. Niktam roisha, its top was clipped off. The top of the stem was clipped off. It was broken off. It's invalid. That's going to be invalid. Nifritzu alea, most of his leaves fell off, or most of his leaves were torn off. We say, or same thing, torn off, or they fell off. They're going to be invalid. V'hatzaptzifa. Okay, this is a new part. A tzaptzifa. A tzaptzifa is a type of it's a type of an arava. Right, it's from the same species as an arava. It's a type of arava, but instead of its leaves being lip shape, they are oval, and because of that shape, that invalidates them. They bring down here. Rashi says we derive from a verse in the Torah that the arava has to be with the leaves being, I guess, call them elongated. While if they're going to be oval, that invalidates it. So it's a type of arava. It's not like it's not an arava. It's an arava, but it's an invalid arava. So these cases, these last three cases, the top was clipped off, the leaves were torn off, the top are invalid. Now, kamusha. Let's say it's not dried out, but it's withered. It's withered. It's not completely dried out. It's withered. And this is not only going on the arava, it's going back on the other cases also. It's going on the lulav, it's going on the hadas, it's going on the arava. The Mishna before said dry is puzzle. But kamusha, withered, it's not dried out completely, it's withered, then it's still kosher. And they bring down here in the notes that this was mentioned specifically by arava because, as we're going to see, the Torah describes arava as arvei nachal, aravas that grow by a brook. So you might think if the Torah says that means the Torah wants it to retain all its moisture. And therefore, the Mishnah says it's not necessary. And not only necessary, not necessary by the arava, but by the hadas and the lulav also. V'shenishru mixas aleha. Let's say some of its leaves fell off, right? But all three of the cases, lulav, hadas, arava, we spoke about nifritzu olav. The leaves were torn off. The Mishnah is not telling you what does it mean how does it become invalid if the leaves are torn off? Not when some of the leaves fall off. If some of the leaves fall off, it's still kosher. Only if the majority of them fall off. V'shel baal. Now this is unique to arava. Let's say it grows in a field. It didn't grow by a brook. The Torah calls it arvei nachal, the willows of the brook. Okay, so maybe they have to grow by a brook. The answer is v'shel baal, which means if they grow in a field, not near a brook, ksheber, they're still kosher. Although the Torah described them as arvei nachal, the willows of a brook, the verse is just speaking of the usual situation. The usual situation was to find them by a brook, at least in times of the Torah. But even if they wouldn't be there, if they don't grow there, it's still kosher. And I think our aravas nowadays, they grow in arava forests, and they don't necessarily grow by the water. They grow. I mean, we used to have an arava bush in our backyard, right? I had a neighbor who had a bunch of arava bushes in the backyard, and all the aravas that come now, they come from a lot of them. I think not all of them come from a. I don't know what you call it, an orchard or forest or a farm of aravas. It's nothing to do with being by a brook, because halachically it doesn't have to be by a brook. Just that the Torah described it that way, because that's the usual situation for them. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi. The ones I bring in are definitely